A couple of episodes ago, we talked about what you can do if you don't have the money to pay for assisted living or memory care, which, if you've ever done the research, you know can be really expensive. But what if you have some money, enough to move into a community today, but not enough to last for years? I'm your host, Valerie Borgman, and today we're going to talk about what happens after you move into a community and the money runs out. Welcome to Desperately Seeking Senior Living, a podcast for sons, daughters, grandkids, and spouses who suddenly find themselves tangled in the search for senior living and care. If you like today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and check out our doable download in today's show notes for a printable summary of the show and a bonus tip from our guest. You're listening to our doable tips, short answers to your questions. Don't see your question listed? Send us a note. Then don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an answer. Hi, and welcome to the show. One of our listeners actually brought this subject up, and I'm so glad they did. It happens all the time that families don't quite understand what happens when the money runs out. So today we're going to take a look at 3 different scenarios. The first scenario: you moved in so many years ago and you thought your money would last forever. Second, you have enough money in savings to pay for a community a fair amount of time, we'll say a few years. And third, you don't have enough money to qualify for Medicaid, which is state pay, government assistance, but the money you do have is going to last less than a year. So let's take a look at the 3 scenarios. Scenario number 1: you moved in so many years ago and thought the money would last forever. Before I started my company, ClearPath, I worked in several senior living communities. And I remember in one building where I worked, there was a woman who had moved in many years earlier when the building did accept Medicaid. The family really thought her money would last, but that day came when the money ran out. And unfortunately, the building was under new ownership and they did not accept Medicaid. Now, she was really lucky because she had lived there so long. The owners agreed to lower her rent to match her income, and she was able to stay. Money is such a personal and sometimes touchy subject. It's also no fun to face the fact that it's running out. And I know of very few who are lucky enough to have an accountant in the family. Most families, and maybe you're one of them, are not lucky enough to have a community allow them to pay less and stay. In fact, one family I worked with was actually sued by the community when they couldn't find a Medicaid community or adult family home, and they ended up having to stay longer at that community. So, even though the money conversation can be uncomfortable, it's better to have it sooner than later. Scenario number 2: you have enough in savings to pay for a community a fair amount of time, maybe even several years. This can be a tough one. We don't have that crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen in a few years in terms of care and care cost rising. Many families choose a community that best fits for today. In other words, the community may not take Medicaid in the future, but it's right by your house, or your mom already has friends there, or you know some of the staff. There are so many considerations when choosing a community. And if this is your decision, great. Now, make sure you set an appointment on your calendar for at least a year before that money runs out. In some states like Missouri, there's only one Medicaid option, so you could set that reminder a little closer. In Washington, there are some really nice communities and adult family homes that will accept Medicaid, but they require or they prefer at least a year or more of private funding before they'll accept Medicaid. Either way, you want to give yourself enough time to apply for Medicaid and to find that next home or figure out if your family can contribute. Scenario number 3: you don't have enough money to qualify for Medicaid, but the money you do have will last less than a year. In this situation, most families do not choose to live in a private pay community, those communities that don't accept Medicaid. But we get calls from families all the time who tell us they didn't understand how Medicaid worked. They moved into that private pay community, not realizing that when that money runs out, they have to move again. I actually had a family tell me that they only had 3 months of private funding, and the community knew this but allowed them to move in anyway. I personally worked with another client sitting in on the meeting with the community, and I heard them very clearly tell us they would accept Medicaid when the money ran out. Well, guess what? A year later, I was helping this family move again. So, the most important thing to remember, no matter the scenario, is that when the money runs out, if you didn't choose a community that actually accepts Medicaid, you'll be asked to move or pay up, meaning family members can pool their resources and pay the rest of the bill each month. I'm going to say that again. If you didn't move into a community that actually accepts Medicaid, you will have to find a way to pay that bill or move. On a side note, be sure if you're contributing that you pay the community your part directly, because giving that money to your loved one could affect their future ability to qualify for Medicaid. This process can be incredibly stressful. And when you add misinformation to the mix, a community telling you they accept Medicaid when they don't, or to move in even when you don't have that many months worth of money, it's no wonder that so many families miss this detail. We're going to put more information in show notes, and hopefully, this has been helpful. If you have a question about assisted living, memory care, or adult family homes, let us know. And until next time, make it doable. Today's episode is brought to you by ClearPath Senior Living Solutions. ClearPath helps families find assisted living, memory care, and other resources. Find our contact information in today's show notes. Check out this episode's doable download in show notes for details, including industry terms and definitions we discussed, as well as a bonus tip from our guest. Have questions or your own tips to share? Leave us a message. We'd love to hear from you. And until next time, make it doable.